Antoine fell when he got murdered. He came from round the back, walking along. At that time, he wasn't aware that he'd been stabbed, and he fell here. When we first came to the scene, we did a memorial for him. There was lots of sand here covering up the blood that was on the street. We had a plaque put up here temporarily and a service with this building where they have a church. And this has the same marking as what the inscription on his gravestone. And it says, in loving memory of Antoine Ichechuku Akpom, born 9th of February 1993. And unfortunately, he passed away the 12th of September 2013. Again, it's born with a purpose, lived to inspire and strive to success. And that's what Antoine did. He helped others aspire to their goals so they can have a brighter future and achieve what they want, and hopefully a ladder to where they want to be in their lives and their future. We had the Archbishop of Leicestershire conducting his funeral. We had the mayor, the deputy mayor, the police commissioner, and all the dignitaries and MPs that were actually there. So as a marking, the council, as a tribute to Antoine, allowed us to put a plaque in the street, and they put a barrier there to ensure that it's not being, destroyed by any vehicles passing. So it just shows how much the city. This is the plaque that Jesse Jackson planted. You got up in memory of Antoine Akpom. This is it that Jesse Jackson planted.
He put up there.
He might be able to do it for you.
It's flooded.
In my hand I have a picture of Antoine as a young boy playing football with his team. Antoine moved to Leicester at the age of 9 and found a fascination for football. He played with a club called Caldicots because that was his first school he went to when he arrived at Leicester. Then when we moved to Hamilton, he actually started playing football at this club, Nirvana Football Club, where he later on became a football coach. And he also played at Highfield Rangers. Football was one of Antoine's passions, and he used this as a tool and a platform to help other young people. He managed then, in the future, a whole team of under 11s. And I've spoken to some of those young people and children, and they said that he was an amazing football coach, an amazing teacher, and they still miss him. The picture I'm holding in my hand at the moment is a picture of Antoine when he played football and also was a football coach in the nearer future. At the age of 9, we moved to Leicester, and Antoine had a passion for football. He started first playing at Caldicote School Football Club, where he attended, and then later on when we moved to Hamilton, Antoine actually started playing football at this club, Nirvana Football Club. He then later on became a coach and managed a group of under-11s. He also played for Highfield Rangers. Antoine found a real passion in football, and not only did he find a passion to develop himself, but he used it as a tool to develop other young people and children so they had some sort of future. It was all about developing skills, not necessarily them playing football, but the skills and the disciplines that he got from it to help them develop as individuals to aspire for their goals. I'd like to tell you the story of what actually happened from what I can recall on the day of the events. So I remember finishing work and actually making my way on the train with a colleague, because I taught drama and we were actually in rehearsal for a play. I got a call from my from my son, to say, "Mum, you need to go home." So I left work on the train, ready to go to rehearsals, happy to sort of go and do my rehearsals for my play that I was directing. And I got a call from my son, and the sternness of his voice said, "Mum, you need to go home." I didn't ask any questions. I just told my colleague, could she take over my class for the evening? And I stayed on the train, and I changed platforms to direct home. And I got another call, and this call was from my daughter, and she was in hysterics. And she said, Mum, Antoine's been stabbed." Well, of course, I just screamed the whole train down, and 2 people came to help me, and I was shaking. I just couldn't believe what was going on. Eventually I met my son at Barnet train station, and we drove silently all the way to Leicester. And he didn't want me to know, because he didn't want me to get upset as yet. And I got a call from my sister-in-law saying that Antoine's gone into surgery, emergency surgery on him. But I actually did not know the seriousness of what happened until we arrived at the hospital. We arrived at the hospital, and there was all these people just standing in the car park like statues, and I didn't know what was going on. And I walked through the corridor for A&E, and normally the A&E is on this side, but they directed me the opposite side to the family room, and the police officer said to me, "Come with me." I said to her I was, and as I was going through the corridor, I could hear screaming and Antoine's fiancée running across the corridor. We didn't know what was going on. I went to the toilet area, past it, and apparently my daughter was in there screaming on the floor. And I was told my son had died. I saw my friend, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Antoine's gone." I said, "What do you mean?" And I started screaming. And the doctor came out, and I said to the doctor, "I want to see my son." And he said, "You can't see him. He's the property of the coroner." And I goes, "What do you mean he's the property of the coroner?" By that time, the doctor had had enough. He was agitated because Antoine's got a big family. So the family and friends that was there before, trying to find out what was going on. I think there was so much noise going on and so much emotions. The police was called in. So when we arrived, my son explained, "We've just arrived. I'm his mum, and we don't know what's going on. We want to see my son." We weren't allowed to see Antoine at all. In fact, the police was called in again, and my son had to explain to them who we were and what's going on. One of the family rooms was closed off. It was a nightmare. I actually collapsed. Someone tried to get help, and it was the actual ambulance driver or person that was helping another patient that came to my assistance. It was so chaotic that night. We just didn't know what was going on. I have 5 children, and my 5 children have all got their own children. And then I have my 5 brothers and sisters, and they were all coming from different parts of the country. And then you had Antoine's dad and his family. So there was quite a huge amount of people coming, and I don't think the hospital was equipped or prepared for that. So there was a lot of chaos on the day, but for us it was really, really emotional. We then met with the police, and we went home to my son's mother-in-law's home in Hamilton. I was in the police all night, and no one slept. You know, there was people coming to and fro. And then in the morning, we were astonished to hear on the news that there was a fire, and another family had been killed, a family of 4, I think it was. And they tried to, at that point, connect it with Antoine's murder. And I was frantic, because what's that got to do with my son's murder? He died. He actually left work at 5:15. He got stabbed at 5:30. His business colleague, Joe, came to pick him up from work. And he had no cause to do that because previously Antoine had made arrangements for his fiancée, and at the point of her getting the call that something had happened to Antoine, she was actually getting ready to pick Antoine up while her mum was cooking dinner. And there was, on his way going to the gym, an incident happened in reference to Antoine had previously was told that someone was threatening his life, and he didn't get involved in criminal activities, and he wasn't sure why someone would be sort of threatening him. And on the way to the gym, he was pointed out who the person was by his colleague, and the car was stopped, and there was a dialogue of shouting between Antoine and the guy that assumedly wanted to threaten his life. So he went back into the car. According to the police, he was 6 foot apart. As he went back into the car, the same guy had picked up a rock, but as we saw on the CCTV, went through court. They got in the car and they drove back, and a few minutes later, what was happened, they drove to the actual gym where Antoine was heading, and the people that were walking where Antoine had a dialogue or argument with, there were 2 persons in that, and one of them was a guy that was transferred from London as a known criminal gang member who had shared cell with the person from Leicester. This person was unknown to Antoine and spoke no dialogue to Antoine during the process. When he got out of the car, he apparently jumped out of the car before it actually stopped because he was upset now. And there was a collision between himself and these 2 guys. What we saw in the CCTV was Antoine putting his hands out like this as if he's keeping someone at bay. And according to witnesses that came up in court, the second person, who was deemed a danger to the community, he was previously involved in a murder in London and transferred under MAPA. MAPA is a multiple agencies that look after serious criminals that's deemed a danger to the community. So he was transferred from London Enfield to Leicester. He was a gang member involved in a previous murder that between Edmonton and Enfield, whatever rivalry that they had, that case fell apart. The police decided to do a covert operation with him, and then he shared cell with this other guy from Leicester, and somehow was transferred to Leicester even though he was deemed a danger to the community. While Antoine was keeping hands at bay, this person, according to the witness, walked behind his back and stabbed him with a 12-inch kitchen knife. Antoine was unaware that he was stabbed. He walked across, some guys came out of the gym, and a couple of people approached Antoine and stated, "Are you okay? And do they want them to go after the guys?" He said, "No, it's fine," and then he collapsed. And at that point they realised how serious it was and that he'd been stabbed. According to a statement that we saw from an ambulance driver and a report, Antoine's last words was, "Am I going to die? I'm going to die." And the ambulance person was trying to reassure him and said, "No, it's going to be okay." But his last words was, I'm dying, I'm going to die."